My guest today is Dr. Brett Kessler. Most people would introduce Brett as the 161st president of the American Dental Association, an Ironman World Championship finisher, a nationally recognized speaker, and one of the most influential leaders dentistry has produced. All of that's true, of course, but I don't think that's the real story. The story is that Brett spent most of his adult life reinventing himself. From addiction and recovery to building a thriving fee-for-service practice. From a young dentist trying to find his footing to leading the largest dental organization in the world. From treating patients to mentoring students, shaping policy, and helping dentists reconnect with why they chose this profession in the first place. Brett's willing to talk about the parts of the journey that most people hide, the struggles, the doubts, the moments that changed everything. So today we're talking about recovery, leadership, his experience in Kona, clinical autonomy, purpose, the future of dentistry, and what happens when a person decides they're not done growing. So, Brett, welcome to the Foundation Dental Podcast, my friend.
Hey, Jim, thanks for the warm introduction. And I think we're going to have to clear out the rest of the week based on all the things we're going to talk about today. I'm very excited.
We got a lot to talk about. Definitely. No, we've had some great conversations over the past couple of months. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, just as a person and as a dentist, outside of, the leadership and some of the other cool things you've done. And I think that the thing I like most is just how what you have to say really resonates with me. I think we look at the industry and kind of life in similar ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to interrupt you right here because I started playing around on TikTok. I have to share this with your audience. and for some reason, you were the only person on my TikTok feed. And so I watched your clips for, every day, many times a day, different clips that you'd put out there. And I felt like I knew you. And then when you walked into the room at PodFest, Glenvow's PodFest in Orlando, I was like, oh my God, Jim. I was like having the fanboying on you, man. I felt like I knew you right from the get-go. So your content is, it's authentic and it resonated with me in big ways. And I was so excited when I got to sit down and have dinner with you that night. So it's been awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Brett, I really appreciate that. That's awesome. I mean, I think that we're both the same way. We're authentic and sort of transparent. And we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we both know that people can learn as much about the challenges we faced and overcome as they can about the things that just went great the first time. And so, I appreciate that transparency. And also, God, we're about the same age. We're both. I'm 56. I think you're 58. And
58.
When I think about that and the kind of the season of life and all that sort of thing, like, what do you look at that as far as that goes? What season of life do you think you're in now?
Oh, well. I still feel like I'm in my 20s, first of all. My energy level is there, and my physicality is not quite there. I'm working on that, but I feel like I've got an awful lot to offer. I've reinvented myself several times in my career, and I'm in a reinvention process right now where, so as you mentioned, I was president of the American Dental Association. My term ended last October, so I'm about 8 months out of that. But I exited that job as literally the most informed dentist in the world. My portfolio of experience is unlike any other dentist gets to experience. So I'm looking for ways to leverage that experience to continue to drive the profession forward in the best interests of everybody, not only the profession, the dentists and the hygienists and the assistants and the whatever workforce, but the patients, and they will all benefit. The better we are, the better we can do, and the better we can make our communities. And so that's where I'm looking, for just to kind of leverage the contribution. And I'm not in clinical practice right now. And there's nothing. I loved being a dentist. Don't get me wrong, and I was damn good at it. And I think it's a noble effort, and I could still do it, but I would only be able to affect one person at a time.
Yeah.
And I want to go all in and really try and influence and improve communities. And as president of the ADA, I was able to my decisions, my comments and my writings all affected millions of people, and hopefully for the good. And it wasn't always so well received, and it still isn't always so well received. But I'm the kind of guy that will speak his truth. I'm the kind of guy that when I think something is right, I'm gonna say it. When I think something is wrong, I'm gonna say it. and I've got a platform now where I can.
I love it. And that really resonates because that's what we were talking about before we got on the air too. Just about how so many people kind of say the things they think everybody wants to hear. And guess what? Not everybody wants to hear it. So why not be our authentic selves and tell it like it is, knowing that some people are going to agree and some people are going to completely disagree. And I think it's fantastic that you, as somebody who is in dental politics for so long, have that sort of mentality. It's refreshing.
Yeah, so I did really dislike the term dental politics, and I went in to leadership roles, and but I had to play politics for to get some things across and stuff like that. But I always played leadership role first, cool. And politics was a strategy to get things across the line, and but I was never someone who's gonna tell you what you want to hear if I don't believe it. And so anyway, it's been a heck of a run, and I still think my best years are ahead of me.
Yeah, so. Man, that's a great outlook. I think a lot of people, they get to that pinnacle, that peak. It's kind of something they wanted to do professionally throughout their career, and then they get there, and then they kind of ride off into the sunset. At least that's been my perception in the past. But you're that guy who's like, hey, man, this is just the start. I got a lot more things to do, because what I love about it is I'm exactly the same way. 30 years in, and I'm more energized and more excited than ever about sharing our perspective from this stage, just having the experience, the knowledge, and the relationships that we have.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's dentistry is in a time of major flux right now. And I think there's so many amazing opportunities. And I've never, in my mind, I really feel the best years of dentistry are right ahead of us as well, as we really, recognize how important oral health is to overall health. And it's time for us to start acting that way. And I think as that happens, every bit of our problems will go away. We'll challenge with new problems, of course, as we hoe this road. I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
But that's what it is, And I went in. It was never my goal to be president of the ADA. That was never my intention. I didn't go to president school. I didn't, it was just, it was leadership opportunities that were put in front of me. And I felt like I can maximally impact from every role that I chose to be in. And if I didn't see a way that I can impact in the role, I would leave the role. And so it is interesting. I was one of the youngest. I'm the youngest president of the ADA in decades, and it was only succeeded by Dr. Rich Rosado, who's 8 months younger than me. Okay, so he's now the youngest one. But typically the president would just kind of roll off into the sunset, and that was their the Lifetime Achievement Award, and right. Which is great. But I really wanted it as a catapult to do something, continue pushing. So
well, I want to pivot. I think everybody knows you kind of as the former ADA president, and it's a big part of your story. But what do you want people to know about just Brett Kessler, the guy?
I have a zest for life. Every day is an opportunity to have experienced my best life. And this was, the genesis of it was, I hit my bottom in 1998. I had a pretty bad substance abuse problem that finally got so far out of control that I was willing to do what it took to get better. And honestly, Jim, I should be dead. And October 21st, 1998 is my sobriety date. But that was the day that I really looked at. I was at a crossroads. Do I want to live or do I want to die? And I really had that. Those were my two choices. It wasn't, do you want to be a dentist? Do you want to be president? No, it was, do I want to live or do I want to die? Because I was on a track towards death if I continued along that way. And some health scares during the trip to the bottom. And I feel like I've come out of it, and given a second chance in life to, and I don't want to waste a single minute of it. And so, I guess, getting to that bottom gives me perspective that, what are really true problems in life? What is truly a bad day? That was a bad day.
Right.
Okay. I've had some days that didn't go so well, but nothing like that bad day.
Well, looking back at that, like the moment that you knew something had to change, like what did that day look like from the inside?
Well, I'll describe the circumstances first. So I went to rehab about 14 months prior. And I went to rehab because I took my staff from Flint, Michigan to Chicago. I dropped them off at the hotel. I called my drug dealer and I disappeared. And that was the first time that I ever, suffered any kind of consequence and, was outed per se. And so I went to rehab, but I didn't resonate with what they told me in rehab. I'm a pretty smart guy, and most of us who are in dentistry are pretty smart as well. And, when we had challenges, we just dig in to learn everything we can about those challenges, and then we overcome and then we move on. And that was my goal, learn as much as I could about substance abuse. And then when I exited treatment, they told me if you're truly an addict and truly an alcoholic, you will drift back to your old ways. So you really have to treat this on a daily basis, manage it like a chronic disease. And I was like, no, thanks for the information. And, but within a few months I was relapsing again and I could not stop myself. And that was pretty scary. So my bottom was my best friend's mother passed away, and I drove back to Chicago. I grew up in Chicago, and was living in Michigan at the time. And so back in the late 90s, cell phone coverage wasn't so robust, and there was a blank spot between like Kalamazoo, Michigan, and the Indiana state border, and where there's no cell service. And it was about an hour and a half of time. I'm in the car, and the thought popped in my head, maybe I'm going to call the dealer. I haven't talked to him in a while. He's a good guy. We should catch up. We should go hang out. I wonder if he has any drugs. And I could not stop obsessing over it. Mm-hmm. And I knew as soon as I got over the Indiana state line, cell coverage would turn on again because I'd made that trip many, many times. And as soon as the cell service came back on, I dialed his number and hit send, and I could not stop myself. Don't dial the number. Don't hit send. Don't drive to his house. Don't get out of the car. Don't ring the doorbell. Don't give him money. Don't buy drugs. I could not stop myself. The obsession had totally hijacked my brain. And, and I made it to the wake. Okay. And then I disappeared, and I didn't make it to the funeral. And that was as low as I had ever been emotionally. I was not the person I set out to be. I was a dentist. I was in my third year of practice. I just let one of my best friends down. Everybody knew it. And I could not stop myself. I could not outthink the addiction, because I thought it was a weakness of will, but it truly was a hijacking of the brain. And that's what most people don't understand if you're in it. And I'm a pretty smart guy. I graduated very high in my class and I got into dental school. I was in a very prestigious GPR. But I could not outthink this. I could not fix my broken brain with my broken brain.
I think that's an important message for people to understand. I think that a lot of us smart people do think we can just figure out stuff on our own. But I mean, that is a physical dependency. I mean, it's a biochemical process that you can't outthink or outrun. You've got to get that therapy.
And I would expand it to all mental illness. Mm-hmm. You can't just pull up your boots and, keep moving forward with a brave face. And I needed help, and I was ready. And that was the key. When I went to rehab, I thought I was ready, but I didn't relate to the people that I was in rehab with. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, they were healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, dentists, but they were way older than me. I was 29 years old. They were in their 60s and 70s, and they had marital problems. They had legal problems. They had licensure problems. They had financial problems. They had health problems. And I didn't have any of those. I just thought I, made some bad choices. Yeah. And I didn't recognize it as a disease. At this point, a year and 14 months later, whatever, I recognize that I'm I'm screwed. If I keep doing this, I'm going to die. And even if I live, I'm not the person I want to be. And it's time to make changes. And when that happened, some switch flipped in my brain that I was in a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And I was willing to listen and willing to take the advice of the treatment professionals and treat my disease for what it was, a chronic manageable disease, chronic progressive manageable disease.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've probably seen me say this online, because I do refer to it quite a bit. My first day of dental school in '92, they told us, hey, you're entering a profession that at that time they said had the highest substance abuse, highest divorce, and highest suicide rates of any other profession. And I really was shocked. I mean, genuinely, because my experience had been so positive. I'd never had a cavity. I go to the dentist. He sees me for 3 minutes and, done. And he has a nice house, a nice car. And that was my perception of dentistry. And
Right.
he did that. It really threw me, Brett. And then, you get out and you see all the things that young dentists are dealing with, or dentists of any age, I should say, and just how incredibly stressful it can be. And then to see people going through the things that you went through, I don't know. I guess I look at that and it puts you in a really unique position to really impact the industry in a positive way as far as that goes.
Yeah, we have a mental health crisis going on within our profession. There's 2 studies that show anywhere from 56% to 82% of our colleagues are experiencing signs of clinical burnout. And so mental illness is way up. Substance abuse is way up. Suicide is way up, which is, it drives me absolutely crazy. I wish we can, if we can stop one person from making that decision, I feel like we've done something successful. But anxiety is way up, and dentistry's hard. I feel that, coming back into, scope of where the profession is, 7-8 years ago, U.S. News and Report rated dentistry as the #1 profession in this country, not just health profession, but profession.
Wow.
And it really, gave this perception that, go be a dentist. It's easy life, just like what you described, got a nice house, got a nice car. They're always happy and stuff like that. And, it was like a license to print money. Right. And so these dental students are coming in with this in their mind. Then they get out and it's like, man, this is hard. Dental school is hard, and practice is hard, and it's hard to find a job. It's hard to make ends meet. And so, we've got this, unrealized expectations and that were set falsely by an independent, resource that a lot of people read. And, and it's still today, dental school applications are hitting record numbers every single year. And the cost of training our colleagues goes up every single year because of supply and demand. And, I visited 30 some dental schools over the last 2 years. And, and I always tell them I'm a D35 from the University of Illinois, and because, when you leave school, that's when your education really begins. Don't ever stop being a student of the profession. And, because it's hard. And I'm pretty blunt with them. And I say, you get out and you are competent, where you're just good enough to not really hurt somebody, but you're nowhere the dentist you're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You're going to grow, but don't expect to be, that 10-year dentist. You need 10 years of experience to be that 10-year dentist. And the only way to get experience is get experience and be patient with yourself. And so that's always been my message to the students starting out, and the new dentists and our colleagues that are starting out, is to be patient with yourself and keep growing.
Such good advice. And I think that that's true for every kind of season of our career. I know that whenever I got into a rut, when I was still a practicing dentist, whenever I felt like, I just wasn't my best self, that's when I knew I had to get out. I had to get out and either do some CE or just spend time with my tribe, and then we could maybe commiserate over some of the things some of the common, issues that we all dealt with, and just knowing that you're not alone. And I think that's one of the things a lot of dentists feel like they're out there on an island and nobody else is experiencing what they're feeling right now. But you and I both know that we all feel those things at some point in our career, right?
Yeah. And like I said, anywhere from 56 to 82% of our colleagues are experiencing this.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a couple. It's that many.
Well, I have seen a bigger focus. I mean, there are quite a few people like you and me and Jeff Boosky and some others who are really focusing on the mental health crisis. I think that
Yeah.
since the pandemic, it's only gotten worse, and it's unfortunate. When you look at a profession that was rated like the best profession you could be in, and it is in so many ways, it's just a shame. But I want to pivot a little bit. I want to go back to kind of like early on in your career. You talk about values, and when you build a team, you got to all have shared values. You got to be on the same page. You got to be, focused on the same principles that, put the patient first and, build a great culture and all that good stuff. Early in your career, you walked away from I think a $250,000 loss at some point because your values didn't align. And that's a loss, but in some ways, was that actually a gift?
Oh, 100%. I've learned more from my failures than I have from my successes.
Mm-hmm.
And so can I even go a little further back on how that decision was made?
Please do.
So I did a general practice residency at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago right after dental school, which was an amazing experience. And not only did it set the foundation for that the mouth is connected to the body, and I practiced that way my entire career, and I use tools for my GPR every single day in my practice life. But what was really neat was the head of the program was the dentist to the stars of Chicago.
That's
And
cool.
he was, doing these amazing rehabs on celebrities. And, we were the dentist to the Chicago Cubs, and I got to do some dental work on one of the home run hitters, and I'm not going to say who.
Yeah.
But it was, first year out of dental school. I feel like, this was the way,
Right.
And my wife moved us to Michigan. She did her orthodontic training at University of Michigan, and I chose a job in Flint, Michigan. And
Wow.
Flint, Michigan in the late 90s was not an economic mecca of the world. It was,
No.
30% poverty rate, 35% unemployment rate. General Motors had pulled out and just left that town devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 60 miles from Ann Arbor where I lived. But I chose it because the guy I decided to work for, his name's Rob Terry. Rob, not the famous Rob Terry, is a different Rob Terry. But Rob was doing the same kind of dentistry on United Auto Workers that my boss was doing on A-list celebrities in Chicago.
Amazing.
And that fascinated me. Okay, I thought this was only for the rich and famous. How do and he taught me about being able to provide value for what we offer to our patients, and and if they appreciate the value enough, they will say yes. And so he sent me down to train with Pete Dawson, and he got me on the track of the Pankey Institute and things like that. Really, and we're the best dentists in the world. We're training and teaching, and that's what I wanted to be. But Michigan, wasn't in our cards. I didn't, it wasn't where I wanted to live. And my wife was graduating. We had just had a kid, and she's like, let's move to Colorado. We love it there. Let's start our lives and live them out there. And I was like, really? Don't tease me. I don't want, don't get my hopes up and then pull the rug out from under me. She's like, no, just get a job and, we'll make it work.
Amazing.
And so I moved to Colorado. And I joined in with a practice that was, downtown Denver. It was a high-end boutique cosmetic practice. And after a year of being an associate with him, I bought in as a partner. And as I bought in with a partner, something in my gut wasn't right. So it just didn't feel right to me. And I started to think long term. And I was young. I was 3 years sober at the time, first of all, and just getting my way in my life. But early in my sobriety, I have to jump back a little bit too. 9 months in, someone handed me the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and by Stephen Covey. And that book just, I don't know what it was, but it resonated with me on a core level. And not only did I read it, but I did the exercises. And in that book, it challenged us to do, to figure out how we want to live our lives, and to figure out, to determine what are your core values, what are your your mission, what is your vision for your life, and things like that. And so I was just getting started with learning who I am and what I stood for and where I wanted to go. It's my, again, this is my second chance at life.
Yeah.
And
right.
I didn't see working with in this environment as a long-term road to happiness and fulfillment. And so there were, different, definitions of values that right or wrong, whatever, I just didn't resonate. And I wasn't sleeping well. My serenity was being affected. And when I get stressed and I'm struggling, I start writing. Okay. And I still do that today. And I'm sure we'll get to that later. But, I started writing, if I were to build a practice, how can I avoid this feeling of angst? Because there were system problems and, and communication problems. And so I started writing standard operating procedures. And he didn't really want any part of it. And I just kept writing because it was cathartic. But I ended up, realizing that this was not going to be my long-term future. And I, sold back the partnership and I lost a bunch of money on the deal, but I gained back my soul is what I want to say. And I feel like that was because early in recovery, especially, my serenity is much more important than money. You're going to make money and lose money over the course of your career. And I never defined my worth by my bank account. It was by my impact. And I still feel the same way. And I could be richer, but I'm not. Whatever I am, but I'm doing fine. I'm happy. I'm comfortable. I'm allowed to have a life that is amazing because of my 30 years in dentistry. But when I sold it back, I made a point to, I'm going to start my own practice. Not even.
And you did that in a neighborhood that everybody said was the wrong neighborhood. Like, you shouldn't do that. You sure can't do fee for service there. You told me last week when we were chatting that you had a business plan you put together, and it was so precise, so specific, down to the color of the carpet or something like that.
Yep.
Like, tell me about that. Like this whole plan, and like, why did you go where they told you not to go and did it anyway?
So I that's funny. It's true though, but I again, out of, frustration, I write and, I had a business coach that helped me put all my writing into a business plan. And it was granular to the point of the color of the carpet, color of the walls. It was granular to the point of who I wanted to surround myself with in my team, not necessarily picking the person out, but what values they had and what they wanted out of their career and how can I provide it with them. And so, I would shop this. It was about 80 to 90 pages. I can't even remember. I got to find it because I keep talking about it. I got to find it. But I go to these banks and show them.
ADA archives somewhere.
It's probably in a corner in my garage, to be honest with you. But I would kind of, take this business plan around to the banks and they'd open it up only to the spreadsheet of the financial projections. They were just, basing my whole worth on my financial projections. And I was pissed. And I went to my business coach and I'm like, what the heck? I did all this time in, developing this vision. He's like, no, Brett, the other 87 pages, those were for you. Okay. That's your business plan. That's how you run your business. All they care about is the money. And he was so right. But when I realized that was my first vision statement out of Covey's book. And, this is who I want to be in my professional role. This is what I want to do with it. This is how I want to impact not only my patients, but the community. And so it was in Northeast Denver where the old Stapleton Airport was. And again, growing up in Chicago, the Glenview Naval Air Station closed down, many years prior, and they turned the Glenview Naval Air Station neighborhood into this amazing redevelopment in the north side of Chicago. And the Stapleton redevelopment, again, another airport, was going to be like 5 times bigger than the Glenview project. And I'm like, I'm jumping on this because I knew how successful it was in Chicago.
Wow.
And so I was the first business to open up in all of the Stapleton area. It's now called Central Park, but I was the first business. There was nothing. There was maybe 100 homes at the time. And the plan was to have 10,000 homes. 40,000 people were going to move there. And but it was in a part of Denver that wasn't so nice.
Yeah.
And but perspective wise, I just came from Flint, Michigan, and I practiced a little bit in Detroit, Michigan, and I had a different definition of not so nice. Okay, there were no crack vials on the sidewalk. There were no homeless people hanging around. I mean, it was really, just a lower income, part of town at that moment. Now it's one of the most astute neighborhoods in Denver.
Wow.
And yeah,
It's
I took
amazing
a
that you
chance.
anticipated that. Again, going back to your experience in Chicago and seeing what had happened around that airport that shut down, and to anticipate that's pretty remarkable. I mean, did the growth of that area happen quickly, or did it take a long time?
Yeah, there were, I don't know, 3 to 4,000 new homes every year built.
Oh, wow.
For any new dentists or dentists who are considering opening up a scratch start, open up where there's positive population growth. That's
Yeah.
where it is. Where they're coming into this neighborhood without a dentist.
Hmm.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
you can be that one. And I was that one for a while. I think there's like 15 dental offices in the neighborhood now. But I had a special niche of what I wanted to do. And again, it was very well articulated in my business plan. And out of frustration, the failed partnership, and I'm not even going to call it a failed partnership. It was a partnership opportunity that didn't work out, but taught me a shit ton. Okay.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
I, so you could say I lost a bunch of money, but no, that was an investment in my knowledge, gaining my experience that I needed to do. And so I was able to, I had a vision for the kind of dentistry I wanted to do, because that was a fee for service practice. My practice
Yeah.
in when I was in my GPR was a fee for service practice. The Flint one was not.
Yeah. Well,
But
you and I both agree that fee for service practice is much better for the dentist, much better for the team, certainly better for patients and that sort of thing. But you got it right. I know I got it right. But where do dentists go wrong when they think about making that shift?
it's a difficult business model.
Hmm.
Okay. And so you really need to know who you are and what you stand for, and to be able to communicate it in ways that is attractive
Hmm.
to potential clients.
Yeah.
And a lot of dentists, first of all, I don't want anyone to take offense to this, but they don't have the inner knowledge of who they are, what they stand for, what they want to provide, and why they can create a niche
Hmm.
that people, or how they can create a niche where people will take money out of their pocket and hand it over to them.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's like $80 billion in sales on big screen TVs every year, most of them right before the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
Okay. And but yet there's no big screen TV insurance that helps to pay for that.
Right.
And people, if they want a
Right.
big screen TV, they value that big screen TV and whatever
Mhm.
bells and whistles that come with that big screen TV. They want to they want to purchase it, and so they do. And so I was able to sell a solution to a problem that most people didn't know they had.
Hmm.
Okay. And this all
Hmm.
was born out of the learnings that I got from the teaching of Pete Dawson and the Pankey Institute early on in my career, that the kind of dentistry that I wanted to do
Hmm.
involved complex thinking, and so I only wanted complex patients.
Hmm.
Okay, I wasn't a cleaning type office.
Hmm.
Okay, I was looking for people who valued their health and were willing to invest in it. And
That's,
so it was.
I gotta say, that's so impressive, because I went through Pankey, Dawson, and like all the other continuums and whatnot. And I got back to my hometown and my practice, and I had a hard time wrapping my brain around that. Every single workup, to the extent that they did it and everything. Because I didn't have celebrity patients and I didn't have people flying in to see me. And I always looked at it kind of that way. Now, I was fee for service, but we were very much a bread and butter oriented practice. Everybody was coming in for the cleanings twice a year, or 3 times or 4 times a year, depending. And again, everything was fee for service. And then we got into more of the caviar, doing the big cases, getting to do some of that fun stuff that I learned. But I didn't have the guts to just say, hey, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. It was fee for service, but it wasn't, to the exclusion of like some of those like little kind of, more routine things. So that's amazing.
It was easy to, kind of backtrack a bunch of times because I wanted to be, I wanted to be involved in the neighborhood, and I was the only one for a little while. But they were mad when I didn't take their insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to really come to terms with the fact that I wasn't in business to be everybody's dentist that could provide everything.
Yeah.
I was looking for people who were invested in their health and were willing to pay for it. And they, and they sought me out. I did some really good PR, and it was bigger than my neighborhood. Let's put it like that. So, my early marketing, honestly, Jim, I'm a runner. I would take my, my little brochures, I'd print them up in my printer at home. I'd fold them up into 3 in a piece of paper, and I would run through the neighborhood, and I'd drop it off at every single person's house.
Oh, that's great.
And
wow.
And as that grew, I hired a high school kid to do it for me, and he hired some of his friends, and they made a bunch of money doing it.
Oh my gosh.
But then, I recognized that, I'm not going to attract everybody that I want to attract here. And so I started doing some PR and some marketing and establishing myself as a cosmetic or aesthetic dentist, but it was more than that. It was health first, it was functional second, and then once that was figured out, then it was aesthetics. So I was an engineer before I was a dentist. Biomedical engineering was my background, and so I looked at everything as an engineering design project, and so I attracted people, especially around facial pain in the early 2000s, and I was good at it because I can understand, and I was sympathetic, I was empathetic with my patients, but I couldn't do a bite guard for somebody for $200 because that's what insurance covered and get them well. Sometimes it took a year before I got them well, and I needed to be able to bill for that. Otherwise, I couldn't do the work I wanted to do. And so and no offense to benefits don't reflect essentialism for the individual. Okay.
It's
and
true.
For these facial pain people, they needed time to process and heal. That didn't happen with a $200 night guard. Okay. What happened was, 20 visits with me. Okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't cut that's $200. That's $2 a visit. Okay. Well, that doesn't work.
You alluded to the fact that, you really have to be able to create value, to communicate effectively, create value, and have that relationship with the patient where they just knew they're in the right place. They sought you out because they already felt that. And then when they got there, what they thought is exactly what occurred. And my whole career, Brett, I had people saying, "Oh, you're so lucky you're fee for service. You're so lucky." And I'm like, you know what? It's a lot harder because it does take higher level of leadership, communication, value creation, team build, all those things, those things they're critical details that a lot of people kind of overlook. And that's why I'm super excited about the fee-for-service mastermind. To be able to have like someone like you on my faculty who lived that, actually built that in his career, and understands why it's so important to have that mindset. That identity piece has to be there first, because if you don't have that, if you don't have the belief in it, the belief in yourself, the belief in your team, then you're never going to be able to project that to patients and have them pay more out of pocket, right?
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, it's not like I opened it from scratch, no patients. And I'll tell you, the day we opened, I unlocked the door and I popped my head out, looked to the left, looked to the right, like, anybody going to come in today? We're here, we're open, and it's like, it's a scary proposition.
It's guts, man.
And when I did a bunch of bite guards and occlusal guards, occlusal splints, we'll call them. I call them bite guards because that's what patients like to hear it. And but it was an orthotic. It wasn't here's a piece of plastic, go chew on it. It was an orthotic. It was highly designed. It was very carefully designed, and it taught me an awful lot about the patients. But my patients, like I said, they were invested in their health and willing to pay for it. So they were already healthy. there
Yes.
wasn't a carries management, feed for my income here. Okay.
Right.
But I did a lot of occlusal splints. And I remember I was scared to death because my working capital had just run out. It was sink or swim time. It was about 6 months in, 8 months in. And the Rocky Mountain Dental Convention was happening, and I invited. I was on their leadership, and I was part of the education committee for the Rocky Mountain, and I invited Leanne Brady and Mark Murphy, two very good friends of mine, Panky mentors, to
Yep.
come speak to us in Denver at the Rocky, and then I hosted them at night. Mark had to go home afterwards, but Leanne Brady and I and one of my mentors and dear friends, Cliff Litvack from Panky, we were to go to dinner. And I made reservations at one of my favorite restaurants downtown, and they showed up like 30 minutes late. And I was so pissed. Okay, I'm like, what the? We're gonna lose our table. It's crowded. And I was really angry. So we finally sit down, and Leanne asks me, so how's the practice going? How's this going? How many? And what I realized afterwards, they were late because they were treatment planning my career.
Oh, wow.
They were discussing how
cow.
can we talk to Brett to live the values that he set out to do and take it to the next level. And in the middle of it, they're like, well, how many splints are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing a ton, but there's no carries. I'm not doing a lot of restorative and stuff. Like, well, how many equilibrations are you doing? And I'm like, and Leanne's like, why aren't you doing equilibrations? I'm like, I was scared.
Yeah,
I was
right.
scared to
They're gonna
death.
say no. They're gonna say no.
No, what if I mess them up?
Yeah, that
Okay.
too.
And I, and I didn't know, I didn't believe in myself, but they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they encouraged me to explore it. That's what mentorship has been for me. Okay. And I've got this saying, that an observation of my life, that when you're on a purposeful path, that angels will appear along that path with a message for you. And they were those angels that night. There's been so many of them. You're one of them too, like I said when we started. But Leanne said, well, Brett, are you dipping your toes in the jacuzzi, or are you going to jump in?
Wow.
It's the right thing. You know how to do it. I've seen you do it. Do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Take your practice to the next level. And that's what it took. Okay. So it's not like I just kind of, opened up and life was great. It was hard.
Yeah.
My own personal development had to happen. My evolution had to happen. And the practice had to build. And as I got more and more confident at it, I had things. So I did take one plan to start. Okay. And, one of my patients paid me, I don't know, like $17,000 for some, we did an equilibration on her. We put her through the whole occlusal therapy. I did, 6 veneers and a couple crowns on her. And it was just gorgeous, a beautiful case on a beautiful lady and a great friend.
Yeah.
And after I delivered it, she was so happy. We had tears, and, we shared tears together because it really changed her life. And she said, oh, by the way, can you submit it to my insurance? And I'm like, sure. And she's like, I know. And she sold insurance. Okay. That was her job. Okay.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know I'm not going to get a lot, but I'll, take the $1,000 that I am due. And so I did it. And I was a participating member. It was a very small part of the practice. But I submitted it, and I got a couple weeks later, a letter from the insurance company saying that I had to give back like $7,000 or $8,000 to the patient. And I was like, my heart sank. Okay.
That's brutal.
And of course they sent it to the patient too. And this was a time when that insurance company didn't share their fee schedule with their providers. Okay.
What?
I mean, the games they play, they continue to play, drives me crazy. That's exactly why I never wanted to be on it. Okay. Yeah. And so anyway, I got the letter, the patient got the letter. I was like, how am I going to, and again, another scary moment. I got to, to figure out, how do I want to communicate this? I didn't have the money to give back to her at the time or early on. I needed it. So anyway, she called me. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to have the conversation. She's like, yeah, Brett, I just got this letter from the insurance company, and they want you to give me back $8,000. And the next thing she said, Jim, I swear to God, she's like, how do you plan to stay in business and be on this plan. The work
There
you
you go.
do, the
Boy, oh
work you
boy.
do, holy cow. I don't think can you do it for half the cost?
Yeah.
I was like, no. She's like, you ought to think about getting off this plan. You don't owe me
Mm.
anything.
Oh my God, what a godsend. I mean, not just the financial part, but the advice, like right there in that moment. I mean, that changed everything for you.
Yeah. And it gave me, again, a message from the angels, a message from the universe saying
Hmm.
I was good enough to convey the value of my work to a patient who was willing to take money out of their pocket and give it to me,
Yeah.
even to the point where she could have gotten half back and she would have had a legitimate,
Yeah.
case to get it back legally.
Mm.
And so I was, and so it showed me I was on the right path. There are people out there that value this, and they are, and they're the
Well,
ones that are sharing tears with me on this. They're not saying, "Oh my
yeah.
God, it's so expensive. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I was just going to pay for
Absolutely.
your new car, your kids'
Hmm.
college, and something." I mean, they were truly appreciative of what I can offer them.
One of
And
the things,
yeah,
at that early stage, you said you were making a lot of night guards and they challenged you to do some equilibrations and like really practice all of the things that you learned and got
hmm
good at. And this is a perfect example of that. But, getting back to kind of the communication piece, you say in your occlusion lecture that if somebody doesn't understand that they even have a problem, you really can't sell to
right,
them.
right,
You can't sell a solution if they don't know they have a problem. So what's the
exactly.
answer to that? Like, how do you overcome that?
So there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Uh, um, it's about slowing the process down. And the
Hmm.
Pankey talks about the co-discovery process.
Yeah.
And, every patient that came in, they didn't get scheduled with hygiene. They got scheduled with me.
Hmm.
And we go through the discovery process. And I had a list of questions that illustrated the three components of the practice. There were a bunch of questions about health. There were a bunch of questions about function. There were a
Hmm.
bunch of questions about aesthetics. And through the questioning and the conversations, I was able to educate the patient on how we did things and why I feel that my dentistry would be the best solution for you. People would come in and say, I just want veneers. I'm like, well, okay. But veneers are not like boob jobs. Okay. Boobs just kind of hang there. Okay. Veneers function. And
Right.
if we, and if we don't address how you use your teeth, we're going to break off my work like you broke your own teeth off.
Yeah, man, they got to look
And
good, they got to feel good, and they got to function well.
but
That
they must
function
function.
piece.
And
Yeah.
the looks come from the function. Form
Yeah.
follows function. If we put
Absolutely.
something that's in the way of what they do with their jaw, it's going to break. We've proven that, and I get to show them that through the discovery process. But that's a whole
Mm.
other podcast that
Oh
I'm happy
yeah.
to repeat
Oh
on.
yeah. Hey,
But
that's going to
but
be the focus of a mastermind,
right. So
meeting
write
because
that one down. Yeah.
I mean, it's so important, and I think that it's something that that some dentists sort of overlook, or like you can also get comfortable in your career, and there are a million different ways to practice. I'm a
hmm
support, whatever you want to do, as long as you put the patient first, as long as you do the right thing for the patient. But Brett, a lot like you, and your story is a perfect example. I said early on, like, man, I would rather sell used cars than give an insurance company 40% of all of my hard work. And what is that? 7,000 out of 17,000 that you're supposed to give back? I mean, that just shows exactly that. And I think that mentality, that mindset, that identity piece that you just believe, this is the best thing for the patient. And when you ask all those right questions and you create a dialogue and a co-discovery process, they start to get it, don't they?
Yeah. And the last question that I ask in the discovery process is, Mrs. Jones, what are your goals for your teeth?
Mm.
What do you want from,
You're like,
from this?
goals for my
Okay.
teeth?
And no one has ever asked them that. And
Yeah,
they have the
exactly.
same
That's right.
reaction. And it's the last question I ask. And, and I share this with, with you here for the podcast listeners. If you don't have this kind of practice, okay, fee for service, slow, 7, 8 patients a month, new patients a month, you can ask that question in hygiene. And, a lot of times the hygiene appointment, exam is they're already laid back. They've got their glasses on. You walk in, hey, blah, blah, blah. Let me look. I poke around and then I get out of there. Okay. Slow that down. Okay. Sit the patient up, look them eye to eye, say, you've been coming here for years. I've been doing dentistry for you. You seem happy here. And, but I just never really asked you, what are your goals for your teeth? What do you, is there anything you could, want to do with your teeth that I can help you with? It's very disarming. You don't say, hey, do you like your smile? It's time for those veneers. It's like, it's like, what are your goals for your teeth? And then shut up, let them talk.
Right. Exactly.
And take notes. And then you say to them, Mrs. Jones, this is really interesting. I'm so bummed that we haven't had this conversation yet. I do have another patient to see. Can I reschedule you, or we can, schedule some dedicated time to really dig deep into this conversation and see if I can help you with your goals?
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. And I think a lot of times with existing patients, it seems hard to pivot and hard to change that relationship and ask questions that you've never asked before. But, again, in terms of you and your life and pivots and reinventing yourself, all that good stuff. I mean, as you know, I did a lot of research. Because I wanted to get to know you even beyond the conversation.
Borderline stalking, I'll have to say.
I know, right? Seriously. Just wait till you read the blog on Friday about Dr. Kessler. But, when you turned 50, you said, hey, it's time for me to plan how the second half of my life is going to look. And that's a huge thing that not many successful people do. Why did you do it? And why do you think that other people don't?
So the genesis again was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where it one of the habits begin with the end in mind. It asks us to, if you're at your funeral, what would you want people to say about you in their in the obituaries or whatever? I can't even think of the word right now. What would you want them to say about you? Write it down and then go live that life. So they say it about you. Okay. Yeah. And so that was, my first, vision statement, like I said, was my business plan for the practice a couple of years later. But at 50, I turned 50 that year in 2018. And I started asking myself some midlife questions. Yeah. I wasn't having a midlife crisis, but I was midlife questions. I'm halfway there. I wanted to live till I was 100. That was my plan. It still is my plan. Good. And I'm halfway to 100. And what do I want to do with the second half of my life? Where can I make a bigger impact in the second half of my life? And I made a pretty big impact in the first half. And what do I want to do professionally for the second half? And so what I came up with that year, it was a pretty big year. My wife and I, we sold our practice that year. I was starting to get burned out, and I wanted to, just change either venues or my employment status. I became an employee there. So we sold the practice. It was the first time I ever did the Ironman. Yeah. Okay. And I've been racing triathlon since the early 90s. So so mid 20s, so 25 years of racing. And I finally got into the Ironman. Yeah. It was the year that I decided to run for the board of trustees of the American Dental Association. That ultimately led to me being president. And then it was the year I celebrated 20 years of sobriety. And 20 years of, sitting at that crossroads, do I want to live or do I want to die? Yeah. And, and I got to reflect back on the 20 years of life that I squeeze out of every minute of that 20 years. And I'm like, I'm just getting started. And, and so that's what I did. And, and it's been a heck of a year. And I'm 58 now. I'm 8 years out of that. And I'm writing a new vision right now as we speak because it's time. I love it. And, but, in my vision statement at that time I wrote, I want to maximally give back to the profession that has given me so much. Now, I attribute my recovery to the phone call that I made to the Michigan Dental Association Wellbeing Program. And that phone call ultimately was the phone call I attribute to saving my life. So organized dentistry saved my life. And so here I wanted to give back maximally to the profession that has given me so much. It gave me a life, physical life, and then a life worth living after it. And I wanted to contribute maximally. And so that's why I ran for the trustee position. And then every decision I had in front of me, or every commitment I had a choice on, am I bringing myself, if I take this commitment, am I bringing myself closer to that vision of maximally contributing to the profession, or am I moving further away? And so that was my lens on how I would answer those questions, whether I wanted to join into that commitment. And then it came time for me to actually decide if I wanted to run for the office of president. And, and again, it fell into that lens, maximally contribute. And, and I could have said no, but I said yes, because I felt I had this opportunity and I'll only have this opportunity once in life. And so I went for it. And my goal, honestly, because a lot of times my ideas, so I was fee for service, and less than 5% of our colleagues are fee for service.
Right.
And I spent 20 some years trying to educate, I taught occlusion at the dental school, morphology and occlusion, talking about this, trying to educate them. I had mastermind groups as well. But no one, not a significant number would take the leap from, HMO, PPO practices to fee for service because of, whatever reason. They had their personal reasons. So it wasn't going away, and we weren't getting it any bigger. Okay. But so I recognize a lot of times my ideas are ahead of what the profession is ready to understand and accept. But if I can plant seeds, and because I'll have this 1 year opportunity to go across the country and talk to the leaderships in every corner of the country and plant these seeds. And that was my goal. Don't get me wrong, I wanted to win, but if I can plant seeds, that would be considered a win too. And I never expected to win, but and I'll tell you, I had a business coach, a longtime business coach of mine. She asked me, well, Brett, who do you need to become to be the best in this role? And I was like, what the heck does that mean? She's like, well, you better grow if you're going to be president. You're the person you are now. It's good, but you don't want to be good. You want to be, a transformational, president. You're right. And I do. And so I didn't understand what she meant. But as 9 months into the campaign, I look back at my life and it stretched me in ways I never expected it would. My communication skills, went up through the roof. My ability to answer questions. Didn't you
give like 220 speeches or something during your 1 year as president?
Yeah. Give 220 presentations, 200 days on the road. Yeah.
Those reps, you can't help but get really good at that. Not to mention whatever time you spent the year leading up to the presidency, like you said, kind of planting seeds all over the country. And I think that's a really great way to do that. And I think the time that you spend at dental schools is another great way to do that. Communicating with dentists, the ones who are, or dental students who are going to be tomorrow's dentists, getting into their minds, about what's possible. And I think that so often you come out of school with all this debt and you just you take the first job you can get. And look, there's something to be said for getting some experience, but I think if you come out with that mentality that anything's possible and some of those skills that, maybe we don't get in dental school, through interaction with you, through mastermind settings, things like that. Hey man, we can make big change over the next 20 years.
Absolutely. And I learned so much as I shared, hearing, what's on their minds, the dental students and the new dentists and the leaders across the country. Every corner of the country had, there were a lot of similarities with the challenges, but there were a lot of, nuances as well.
Sure.
And so all of this experience helped me be a better leader. But I want to share and close this loop with about 9 months in, I recognized I loved the person I was becoming in pursuit of this goal. And if I hedged my bet, so I do Ironman races and these crazy stupid ultra marathons and bike races and stuff, and I never expect to win. It's always me versus me, and I get a medal if I cross the finish line. But here I'm in this campaign where it's you're the winner or you're the first loser. Okay. Yeah. And that's a whole different level of pressure to succeed. So I started hedging myself and saying, well, I love the person I'm becoming. And I recognize that the universe is preparing me for something. If I don't get president, I'm going to have some kind of impact from this experience I'm gaining. And so I was fully ready for that. But then I ended up, winning. And like I said, I took advantage. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And what I set out to do, and I got to do everything. And I was really, really proud of what I got to experience and accomplish.
Well, I think the mindset and mentality that you had going into that was really smart. I mean, we talked before we got on the air about setting high goals. Setting goals so high that some people may consider them unattainable. But if you fall short, you're still going to accomplish a lot. And even if you hadn't won, you had already accomplished a lot in terms of becoming more of the person you wanted to be, and in terms of spreading the message, throughout the country and throughout the industry. So that's like a perfect example.
Yeah, and it's not about the accomplishment, and I learned that from the Ironman, because I crossed the finish line, and man, it was a 30-some year bucket list goal of mine, okay, to do this.
Wow.
And to but it wasn't the finish line that was fulfilling. It was, who did I become in process of getting the even start line.
They always say the
joy in the journey.
The journey is more important than the destination. And you've certainly experienced that in a lot of ways. And I know, as far as your Kona story, I know that your mom was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2009, and you ended up racing for the team that I think developed the drug that kept your mom alive.
Yeah, so let me backtrack on that. So in my general practice residency, my second year of that was a cancer fellowship. And it seemed like a lot of my patients were not only head and neck cancer, but blood cancer patients. So leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, and they would get bone marrow transplants. And so, and what to before the bone marrow transplant is you would wipe out their entire immune system, because their white blood cells are going crazy. That's what leukemia is. That's what lymphoma is. So they'd wipe out their immune system and inject and transplant another immune system in there. That's what the transplant is. And when they are in that nadir where they're wiped out the immune system, if there's any infection going on in their mouth, they'll have zero ability to fight it. Right. And so we would, ensure that these patients were free of active infection before their bone marrow transplant. And so I got to know and see how devastating these blood cancers were. And there weren't a lot of successful treatments at the time. Okay. And but I learned a ton about, and medicine, again, how oral health affects overall health. And but I moved to Michigan. I was still involved with a couple different hospitals. I taught at the general practice residency at University of Michigan. I was also on staff at Henry Ford Hospital, and I would in the dental department, and I would treat these precancer patients, and make sure they were safe to undergo the bone marrow transplant. But when I moved to Colorado, I wasn't involved in any hospitals anymore, and in hospital dentistry. And I got a postcard in the mail from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society team in training. And I looked at it as, hey, there's a group of people that I can train with and get some coaching, and I could raise money for these, this horrible disease that I got to, treat a lot of these patients, back in my training, and I'm not giving now. So I feel like I'm getting all these wins from it. And so I signed up for the LA triathlon with Team in Training. I raised about $10,000 through that. And it was a Team in Training event. So there were hundreds of, I call them purple people. They all wore purple jerseys during the race, me included. And we raised about, I don't know, $4 or $5 million collectively in that race. That money went to a researcher in Seattle, and that researcher developed a drug called Gleevec. And Gleevec is a drug that treats chronic myelogenous leukemia. And CML was a death sentence before this drug. This drug made it a chronic manageable disease like diabetes. Okay, you take your insulin, you can live. You take this Gleevec and you can live. No cancer in my family whatsoever, and whatever. I felt really good about that. And I became a coach for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I was a coach for, 10 years, and hundreds of people I coached through triathlons and marathons, and, millions of dollars was raised beneath me in my line. And, and I was having fun, as I'm racing, I'm training, I've got this group of people we're giving to the world. It's all awesome. My mom was diagnosed with chronic myelogenous leukemia.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You couldn't write
And
that. I mean, that's a script
I
no
know.
one would believe, right?
Yeah. And Gleevec, was one of the drugs that she got to take. And, so I now saw the value of fundraising that funds research that, gets to clinic gets to our patients as quickly as possible, that literally saves lives. And she ended up dying in 2017, because her body just gave out. She had so many other health problems that she could not uh, she couldn't take another round of chemo, and her body just gave out. And so when she passed, I was involved still with the Leukemia Society. I wasn't coaching anymore for many years, but they were supporting me throughout, especially after the diagnosis. And and they asked me, do I want to do a fundraiser in her honor? And I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, I don't want any attention. She said, no, not while I'm alive. Do whatever you want after I'm dead. But I mean, she really told me that. And so I didn't do it while she's alive because she didn't want the attention. But when she passed, I did. They called me and asked what I wanted to do, and I said, is that Kona thing available? And Kona is the Ironman World Championships. And they checked, and I went through an interview process. And I was one of the ones selected, and I got to go and race my dream race. And I raised about $70,000 for that race. And I was disappointed because my goal was 100, and I didn't get to 100. But I'll tell you, my kids, in honor of their grandma, my mom, they've done Student of the Year fundraising, and they've raised well over 100. My family has raised a ton for leukemia over the years, Lymphoma Society. And so anyway, I got to do it, and it was amazing. Yeah.
Kona is such a special place. My wife and I went for the first time, I think, in 2008. We were celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and a dentist who I used to teach with. I was taught with David Hornbrook, and one of our other instructors, she'd always talk about her husband who was doing the Ironman every year. He always qualified for Kona and all that sort of thing. And our anniversary coincided with that year's World Championship.
Wow.
And it was kind of cool, Brett, because we got to, I just met John the night before, and that, I think 4 a.m., we took him to the race course.
Nice.
And my wife and I were out there for probably, 14, 16 hours that day, and just blown away, because we're both athletes. I was an All-American runner in high school and ran Division I and stuff. And by the end of that day, my wife became convinced, oh my God, I need to do this. And sure enough, we both got into Ironman training the next year, and she qualified and raced in 2013.
Amazing.
So that leads me to my next question, because I know exactly where this happened, because in 2013, we got in the water and we swam the Ironman course there in Kona. And so I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it, and how special it is. You told me a story last week about how you dove down to the bottom of the water there and saw a sea turtle, and you screamed to, I think it was Madame Pele or something like that. And, all of a sudden a sea turtle appeared, one of those angel moments. Tell me about that. What did that mean to you?
So I've been racing triathlon since 93. Okay. This is 2018. So 25 years later. My first Ironman. I've done a couple of half Ironmans, but I hadn't raced a triathlon in 10 years. I was just doing ultra marathons.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And, I live in Colorado, and I love the trails. I love getting dirty and getting high in my own way, not substance abuse.
Right. You're at altitude.
And so I got into Ironman, and I, had to relearn everything. And so I hired a coach, and the guy I used to coach with for team and training. And he, kind of shepherded me through things. And then I called everybody I knew who had done Kona and asked them their experience, asked them their advice.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, she had done it several times, and she said, when you get there, there's a pier where the swim start is. On one side of the pier is the swim start. The other part is where you can kind of warm up, and it's a lagoon. And she's like, go in the lagoon, swim down to the bottom, and lay out a primal scream as loud as you can from from your gut. And this is to let Madame Pele know that you are here on the island, and then you're to ask her for permission to be on the island and for safety for you and the rest of the racers that day. And so I went down, and I mean, I'm freaking nervous, dude. Okay. It's 5 a.m, 6 a.m. It's going to be a long freaking day. And so I do it and I'm not superstitious at all, but this is the world championships. The whole world is watching me in my mind, and they gave me all this money, and and social media is a thing now, and everybody's following me, tracking me. And I'm not going to take anything for granted. So I'm going to do the superstitious thing. So I go down there and I lay out this primal scream. I come up, and it felt so good. And, me, part of my addicted mind is, if it feels good, let's do more of it. Okay. So I dove down again to the bottom, and I let out this primal scream, and I look up, and honestly, it seemed like time stopped. I looked up to my right. There's this giant sea turtle, as big as my wingspan, and I swear it's flying down there, and it's awkward on land, but it's in its element. It's just flying around. Time stopped, and I swear to you, we locked eyes. He gave me a nod. I gave it a nod, and then he nodded and swam away. And it seemed like an eternity. It was a matter of seconds, obviously, because you're underwater. So I climb up to the top, and I just laid on my back, and I had this feeling that overwhelmed me, that that everything is going to be great today. You're going to have a day of that you'll remember. You worked hard for this, and it's going to be amazing. And and I later found out that the Honu in Hawaiian culture, it stands for a lot of things, but wisdom, safety, guidance, and longevity. Okay. And, back in the day, the Polynesian islands, they would canoe from island to island. The Honu would guide them.
Right.
Okay. And they lived to like 150, 200 years old, and, they've seen everything. So they have the wisdom, and, but I just felt this feeling in my soul that, my mom was with me. Madame Pele gave me her grace to have a good day and be on the island and be safe. And, and I've felt connected to that island every day since 2018, October 13th, 2018. And it was amazing. It was a great day.
Endurance sports are such a great way to learn life lessons. I mean, I learned life lessons from, running 100 miles a week when I was a teenager, life lessons, leadership, that sort of thing. So for you, like, over the course of your career as an endurance athlete, like, what did you learn about leadership that you wouldn't learn probably in any other way?
So many things. There were so many metaphors there that helped me in every aspect of my leadership journey. What comes to mind is, first of all, is I had to be teachable, and I didn't have to know everything. And a leader, you don't have to be the one with all the answers. Yes, if you have the answers, that's great, but you have to know how to ask the right questions. And so, as I mentioned, I hired my old friend, coach Charlie, who's a world-class Ironman triathlete, to guide me. And, even though I've been doing triathlons for 25 years, this is not the normal one. And I had to,
new experience, man.
Right. So I had to ask him how, and I had to ask for help. And, when you're a leader, if you're leading, you want to go far, go alone, go fast, go alone. And I didn't want to go alone. This was a group effort. And so he really, guided me. And I learned that, in the year plus that I was training, that not every day was a good day. And I made some big mistakes in my training, and I made big mistakes in practice races.
Nutrition.
And nutrition, and pack my bag right, or I forgot my bike shoes, or so things like that can ruin your day, and you get to put that in your toolbox to not make that mistake again. But when you make those mistakes, that it's not the end. Okay. It teaches you how can you be creative in this situation. And, I learned, especially on that day where I was really starting to melt down at mile 80 on the bike ride, and
Yeah.
it's like 100 degrees and, and not a single cloud in the sky, nowhere
And it's
to
windy on that King
yeah,
K highway,
both
man.
ways, both
I
ways.
know, right?
Yeah. But I had to really think about, how am I going to get through this, and I got to go to the Ironman World Championships the following year, and I was done after the bike ride. My brain said, forget it. You've done this already. You don't need this in your cap. And so I went to the changing tent and I just kind of rested for a while, closed my eyes, and the volunteer, the changing tent, started giving me, Gatorade and water and food, and tied my shoes for me, and they're massaging my legs and my back. And he's like, Brett, get the hell out of here. Go run. I'm like, there's no way I can run a marathon right now. There's no way. And the conditions were the worst in 2019. And he's like, just do this. Get out there, get moving, walk, run, get to that first aid station. And at that first aid station, you're going to have people are there to give you Gatorade and water and food again. And, and then, go to the next aid station a mile later, and you get to repeat that. There was no way I can run 26 miles, but I can run a mile.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I ran a mile 26 times, and, and I was running 10-minute miles, and I can run for 10 minutes. That's all I have to do is run for 10 minutes. Then I can walk through the aid station, recharge myself, run for 10 minutes, walk for 2 minutes. And that's what I did. And so learning about leadership, especially when I was president, we had issues that are not going to be solved easily. There's no clear path to this, but I would ask myself, what can I do right now to make things better? How can I run the mile that I'm in? Basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I make these little changes to start to turn the trajectory of the problems I'm facing as a leader, as a person, as a dentist, as an owner, because not everything always goes right. But a series of small steps towards a desired goal, momentum starts to build, and you get to that finish line.
I love it.
But you got to break it down to 1 mile at a time. Race the mile you're in.
Yeah. Thinking about that year you spent as president. I mean, I think your hotel rooms like 225 nights or something like that. When you close the door, at the end of a long day and you're in the hotel room, like, what is the responsibility of being kind of the most informed dentist on the planet? What did that feel like when you were alone?
Well, first of all, I had a very strong, active gratitude practice. And and my recovery mentors taught me that when I get into a bad funk, write something every day that you're grateful for. And you can't repeat yourself. Every day you can't say, oh, I'm really grateful for my health, my family, my job, health, family, job. It's got to get down to, you can't repeat anything. And so it gets granular to the point where I'm grateful for the sharpness of this pen that has ink in it. Okay. And it taught me to be grateful for things in the moment. Okay. It is a brain exercise that trained my brain to find gratitude in everything. And so that's where I would start at the end of my day. And I do a pretty daily debrief at the end of the day, and a daily goal setting and meditation in the morning, and mindfulness practice. And I kept thinking, of my origin, my life or death moment in October of 1998 to today. And, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to drive this profession forward one little step at a time. And not every day was good, but I found good in every day.
I love it. Another, just to play off of that, I remember you told me the story about being in the ADA archives and, reading original texts from like Pierre Fauchard and G.V. Black, and the realization, like, it hits you like a ton of bricks. I think, holy cow, I'm in the same lineage as these guys who held the same office more than 100 years ago. And you said it was like an oh shit moment.
Right.
Talk me through that. What did that feel like?
But lots of oh shit moments. I had an oh shit moment when I got into the Ironman. I had an oh
Yeah.
shit moment when I won the election, and I was having this oh shit moment when I did this. So we were unpacking some of the archives at the new ADA headquarters, and
Hmm.
and the librarian goes, "Look at this, Dr. Kessler," and she handed me Pierre Fauchard's original book from the 1700s, and it was
Wow.
all in French, so I didn't understand it. But I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
this was like an original printing, and I'm like, should I be wearing gloves for this? And
No,
oh
right?
no. I'm like, no. So I put it down because I didn't want to. I didn't want the oils from my skin to be the one that drilled a hole in this for
Right.
that melted a hole in it 1,000 years from now. But it was really kind of cool holding that. And then she handed me a book by of G.V. Black. So when G.V. Black was the dean at Northwestern Dental School in Chicago,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, there was a stenographer there annotating every single word he said. And so this book was a collection of his lectures to the dental students at the time. And it started out by saying, "Gentlemen, welcome to the profession of dentistry." It didn't say ladies and gentlemen. There were no women at the time.
Right. Right.
Today, we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah. And it was all annotated. And it was as I could just visualize being in that audience, listening to him. You don't realize you're in the presence of greatness while you're, a lot of times when you're in it.
Yeah.
Okay. And, this guy is one of the greats in dentistry. And then right after that, I didn't know this, but he was the president of the American Dental Association in 1900. And the oh shit moment was, I'm the president of the American Dental Association 125 years later.
Wild.
And
Oh my
I'm on
gosh.
that lineage. And again, the responsibility that I have in this role to drive the profession forward, to make it the best it can possibly be, not only for
Mhm.
us in the present, but for the next 125 years,
Yeah.
it weighed really heavy on me, and it was a duty of mine to ensure that I leave it better than when I got it,
That's
and I felt
great.
that obligation, and I know I got to lead through some really interesting times, and I was I ran the campaign on a change makers platform,
Hmm.
okay, because the way we were going, we were not going well.
Yeah.
Okay, membership was going down, and we're losing relevance with especially the younger dentists. That's why I wanted to go to so many dental schools, and I spent 10 years leading up to that, present my wellness presentation to dental students across the country. For 10 years, I've been doing that. That's not
Hmm.
something new.
Yeah.
But as president, I've got this platform to really, encourage people to recognize that we are human, and you will suffer human conditions like mental illness and physical challenges and things like that. And, and just honor your
And
humanness. And you go through these challenges. It's not life threatening or life ending. It's a
yeah.
chapter that needs to be, needs to end, and a new chapter can start. And you can still do great things after,
Hmm.
tragedies like I had to go through when I was at
Yeah.
rock bottom.
Well, you were president during a really difficult time, a moment. I mean, it was probably the most politically charged time, like in dentistry's history. When fluoridated water is being attacked, and you had to go and speak with White House officials and just do all the things that you did during that year. Walk me through that. Like, what was that experience like? And looking ahead, I mean, do you think these attacks are going to continue? It's really
When
frightening.
So I took over as president the end of October of 24.
24. Yeah.
And a week later was the presidential election, first week of
Mm-hmm.
November.
Mm-hmm.
And our advocacy team was working with both the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign. And so we were, informing and guiding them on healthcare policy, especially around dentistry for either. So, we are not a political organization. Our party is the Tooth Party. And, oral health issues are Democratic just as much as they are Republican. And so we had, strategies in place for whoever won.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Trump administration won, everyone was a little scared because of the RFK threats. Okay, that he was gonna,
Yeah.
he threatened that, Trump was going to outlaw fluoride the day he was going to be, inaugurated. And so we were always worried about that. But then I thought about it, that we were, even in the Biden administration, they weren't very easy to work with either from an oral health perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we didn't get much done under that. We got some things done. Absolutely. And we're grateful for everything that we did get done with them. But with the Trump administration, we had a plan. And so for the first time that I can ever remember is we decided to have a proactive legislative advocacy strategy. And so the day before the Trump's inauguration, we took out a full-page ad on the back page of the front section of the Washington Post, and I wrote an editorial that basically said, "We are the American Dental Association. This is who we are. This is what we stand for, and this is what we can do to help make America healthy from an oral health perspective." Full-page ad in the biggest media day, or second biggest media day in the world, the whole world coming into Washington, D.C. for the inauguration. Okay, so we got a lot of views from that. I followed it up with a personal letter to President Trump and every single member of Congress that was way more detailed than the editorial that we wrote. So they all knew who we were and what we stood for.
Yeah.
And awesome. We had to decide what our strategy was, how we're going to work with you, and what we can do to help you with your goals.
Yeah.
Because every administration comes in with certain goals, and some are on the table, some are not on the table. We're not going to fight for those that are not on the table. We're going to go after what we can actually do and still move our profession forward. And but when RFK was confirmed as the HHS secretary, he challenged fluoride in big ways. And he challenged science in big ways. Yeah. And science and evidence-based are two of the ADA's core values. My job as president is to align all of our actions along the lines of our core values, mission, and vision. And so when our core values are being challenged, I have to show up. And I made statements in every major periodical across the world. Okay, I think my statements around fluoride, ADA, and Brett Kessler was like 54 billion views worldwide. Okay, oh my God. So I was everywhere speaking up in favor of true science. And, and so we fought for it. And, among other things, they dismantled the oral health division of the CDC. The FDA decided to challenge fluoride supplements. So when Utah became the first state in the country to outlaw fluoride, it was under the guise of, we need to give our citizens the choice to, if they want to medicate themselves. And then the FDA is taking away that choice. And so I had to stand up for it. And so I testified, before the FDA, the EPA, Congress many times. We went to the White House and met with Dr. Heidi Overton. And she was the deputy director of domestic policy and the principal author of the MAHA report. And I feel we did a really good job, minimizing the fluoride conversation in the MAHA report. Yeah. And so we were out there doing it. And so never before in the history of dentistry has the profession been lifted to the conversation at the level of the President of the United States. Okay. This isn't the way we wanted to, but hey, we're a national news item now. Okay. And so, the Trump administration, we don't view things about fluoride the same, but we do view things like, they want to reduce sugar intake. We want to reduce the ingestion of ultra-processed foods. And when we talk to Dr. Heidi Overton, I'm like, Dr. Overton, we talk about this every day with our patients. It's like, wow, I never thought of that. Sugar causes cavities. We talk about diet, and how important it is for oral health and overall health. And we see the ramifications of ultra-processed foods and high sugar intake with diabetes. And we can treat stuff, like periodontal disease that'll help our patients be healthier with their diabetes management and Alzheimer's and colorectal cancer and preterm low birth weight babies and cardiovascular disease, all these things. She's like, wow, that's great. And so we're working with them on that. I don't know what we're doing now. I'm not, I get in trouble for this because people think I speak for the ADA. I don't speak for the ADA anymore, but that's what we were working on. And I'm pretty sure we're still working on that.
Yeah.
Dr. Rosado, current president, and I penned an editorial in JADA, specifically how we want to work with this administration. And we pointed all these things out. And, yes, we're not in favor of some things, but we are in favor of other things. And, we learned, and this is a principle that I learned in recovery, in my recovery program is, principles over personalities. Attack the principle, not the person.
Yeah.
And so RFK, has some wild ideas about fluoride. He's got some really good ideas about other things, and we want to work with him on things that we're aligned with. And if we attack the person, we never get that opportunity, and everybody loses.
Look, and I think that's the problem I've always had with extremism. When you have very extreme views, sometimes it makes you unapproachable. It makes it difficult to find common ground. And so I really respect anybody who kind of extends an olive branch and leads with, hey, I really agree with this. And can we come to some sort of compromise on that? And I think that's the only way that you can affect change. And, the position that you were in, I mean, it was like the perfect time for you to be there. And to do exactly that in a proactive manner, like you did.
Yeah, and could have been a lot worse. There were 21 states that introduced bills to ban fluoride. We only lost in 2 of them. Okay,
wow,
we won every single one other. So we did a really good job.
Yeah,
and so now, when those states that have outlawed fluoride, or different communities that have outlawed the fluoride or removed it from the water, we know there's going to be a 25% increase in caries and kids amongst those. Okay.
Yeah.
And when this administration is gone is when we're going to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
And,
right.
but because we have raised our, status to the level of the president, the conversation level of the president, people know dentistry can help improve health, and we are going to be the ones that are going to lead it.
Well, and it's the perfect time. It's a perfect time because there is such a push towards that, the oral body connection, that we've known forever, but for whatever reason, it's just never been fully integrated, or it's just been kind of a sideshow. Bringing that to the forefront on the national scene, I think, is really important, because beyond just educating our profession, like educating the general public, making sure they understand how that impacts everything else in positive ways and in negative ways.
Yeah. And I think we're poised to do that. And there is a movement going forward. I just published an article in the Metro Denver Dental Society's Articulator Journal on what really is going to have to take to become truly integrated with, the mouth and the body. And I really believe it's a separation of the benefits that is driving this. And, we've had a benefit system that, maybe 90% of our colleagues take it now. And we, coming back full circle at the beginning of this conversation, 90% of us take some kind of dental benefit. It worked for us for a long time. We did pretty well with it. None of us liked it though, but we did pretty well. Right. And because they have not raised their reimbursement rates, they've not raised their cap, and it's not really an essential benefit. It's more of a coupon. Right. It doesn't reflect essentialism and really improving health. It's check boxes, really. Yeah. It's not working for us anymore. And I really believe the dentists are feeling the squeeze. I think it's reflected as a cause of the workforce issues, because we can't offer our team members the career opportunities that we were able to offer them even 10 years ago, because we can't afford to. Okay. We can't give them, every year they want raises because cost of living goes up, but the benefits are either staying the same or going down. That doesn't work.
It doesn't.
That doesn't work. We can go faster, make less money faster. That doesn't work either. And somewhere along the line, we decided it was acceptable to take less money for our services when we're treating poor people. And I'm going to get angry here because it's bullshit. Okay. That they deserve the same quality of care that people that have means. Okay. Absolutely. And why do we accept this? It's just not, it's not right. And, especially in lower incomes, there's social determinants of health that create all sorts of challenges with them. They have higher caries rates. They have worse health problems than and higher income individuals. They need more care. And, and we know oral health is essential to overall health. But in this country, is healthcare a right or is it a privilege? And let's talk about that for a second. Okay. And if I have degenerative joint disease in my hip, I can get a titanium post placed in my hip. No matter if I have Medicaid, which is benefit system for low income, Medicare, benefit system for old people, private insurance, I can get medicine's finest. But if I'm missing a tooth, I can't get a titanium post placed there. Why is, and this isn't life threatening. This is, pain when I walk. Okay. If we were to translate the dental benefit model to medicine, instead of giving them a titanium joint replacement, we'd give them crutches. That's what a flipper is. It's a crutch.
Right.
Okay. If I'm missing a tooth, you're missing number 8, we'll give you a flipper. And that's what insurance will cover. Okay. It does not reflect essentialism. And, and then, this twist that I just had this realization that the whole joint replacement industry was spurred by research by a man named Brannemark.
I've heard that name. Where did I hear that name?
This researcher, Brannemark, was studying circulation in bones, femur bones of rabbits. And so he had these titanium microscopes that he would place in the femur bones so he can look at the microcirculation in the bone. When they sacrificed the rabbits and tried to remove the microscopes, they realized that the titanium microscopes were stuck because the bone grew around them. Osseointegrated was formed. Okay. That turned into dental implants, which then turned into this whole joint replacement market that accounts for about $25 to $30 billion a year in spending. Okay. Wow. Medicine offers their finest care. And this isn't life-threatening medicine. This is quality of life medicine. Dentistry is it's important. Why is walking any more or less important than removal of infection, the ability to chew, and the ability to face the world with dignity with a full smile? I'm not saying everyone should get 20 veneers to have a full smile, but they shouldn't be missing a front tooth.
No, agreed.
Okay. It's time for us to stake our claim as essential part of healthcare that we are, and the benefit systems have to reflect that, and they don't right now.
So, Brett, tell me a little bit about your writing. You've alluded to that a couple of times. You're a journaler and you've done all that sort of thing. And I know you're in the middle of writing your memoirs now. Is that right? Tell me about that. That's a big project.
A friend of mine, Dr. Mark Kogut, and I were we've started a leadership development, coaching, and consulting business called Dentistry Reimagined. And I'm having a lot of fun. And I've got a couple clients, and I'm coaching them, leadership acumens and helping people find their purpose per se. And so part of that is, articulating out our strategies. And so I've been writing about, leadership and things like that. And so I started a book there. And the feedback I got from some of my mentors were like, well, these are great. It's good information, but where's the Brett stories? Why isn't Brett stories in there? And so I started putting Brett stories in there. And then I was like, wow, I got some really cool stories. And I've got it all documented for over the years through my blog, through social media, through my writing, my articles that I published. So I'm just taking them and putting them together, and I've got about 30 some chapters written so far.
Wow.
And I'm just having a blast. And
That's
because
cool.
last couple of years as an officer was so intense, the days were long, 18-hour days on the regular. Like you said before, I was on the road like 225 days last year. I mean, every day was action, and I didn't get to process it, and I didn't get to really, in the moment to the level that I would have liked to, because I just didn't have the time. I had to show up every day, sometimes at different rooms, many different places, many different audiences. And so I'm getting to process it and again recognize the gift
Mm.
of the role that I got to play in the last couple of years, and the gifts that I've been given over the years, growing up, and my recovery moments, and how I've woven my recovery principles into becoming the person I've always wanted to become.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to read the book because, having written about you this week, it's my blogs are usually about 1,500 to 2,000 words. I believe it was 3,700 words because I couldn't cut anything out. There's just so many stories and so much stuff. I couldn't, I can't wait for people to read it. But,
Thank you.
you've referred to the presidency as like a catapult, launching you into this next phase of your life. And we both know that a lot of ADA presidents, they kind of go through it's the pinnacle and they kind of ride off into the sunset and, feel like really good about, that being sort of the end of their career. So tell me what this catapult is launching you toward. What's next?
So, all this writing that I've been doing, I'm sharing it on my platforms, and, and it's stirring up conversations. Some are controversial, some are well accepted, but whatever. I think it's stuff that needs to be said. And I think that when we stir up things, progress happens. And so, first off is, this, my consulting business is really fun because I get to work with people and groups and watch them grow. And I get to share my experience and hopefully impart on them that anything is possible. And, and some of the people that I've worked with have made some major life changes and life improvements as a result of, some of the guidance. So it's really, for me, very fulfilling with the impact. I'm also on advisory boards for some startup companies that I feel will change the course of our profession in big ways. New materials, new technologies, new techniques, new paradigms that will, improve. And whenever I'm looking at new technologies and stuff, and I look at efficiency and efficacy, better care for cheaper. And so these groups that I'm with are going to really expand upon that in big ways.
I can't wait to compare notes on that someday because I'm on several advisory boards now too, for new technology companies and whatnot. And it's pretty exciting. I look at it and in some ways I'm like, man, I missed out on like all this really cool stuff, as a practicing dentist, but it's cool. At this stage of the game, it's awesome for both of us to be able to share our experience and our knowledge and maybe help shape some of these technologies, some of these products, based upon those experiences. But
and in a few weeks, actually, let me just close this up. I'm going to Washington D.C. to be part of a think tank on medical dental integration, exactly what I just shared before.
Wow.
With some major levers in the profession, and and to see how we can really push this forward. And there's a lot of us out there, and it's not just dentists. There's medicine involved. The American Medical Association will be there, and so everybody's looking, because oral health leads to better systemic health. And every healthcare provider, healthcare professional wants our patients to be healthier. Why it's time for us to remove these barriers and help and start working together and reconnect the disparate health systems that we are in right now. So I'm really excited about those kind of conversations.
I love it. Going back to those dental students again, though, I know you've got a virtual mastermind with a bunch of dental students in it. What kind of questions do they ask you that they won't ask their faculty?
What's it really like out there? Am I going to make it? It's really whatever question they're asking. They're really asking, am I going to make it? Did I make a good choice? How do you find a job? How do you find a mentor? And I really can't emphasize enough to let them know that they are barely competent when they get out, but that's okay. We all were.
Yeah.
Okay. And you will be fine. And I really, they want to know, should I take this job? Should I take that job? Should I work for DSO? Should I not? Should I, how do I even get a job? And what classes should I take when I get out and things like that. And, so I always turn it back on them, and I'll ask them, I don't know if you should take this job or not. I don't know if you should, tell me about your goals. Okay. Ask them a goal. 5 years from now, you're practicing as a dentist. Tell me what that looks like to you. And, and if your life were as good as it can be 5 years from now, tell me what that looks like for you. Now you've got that visual out there. Does this job move you closer to that? You're not going to find the perfect job, and your first job isn't going to be your last job. So don't get hung up on that. Get out there and get that drill spinning and get your experience. The only way to get better is through experiencing. The only way to get experience is by experiencing things. You can't read this in a book. You can't see it on social media. You got to get out there and do it.
Sometimes clarity comes more from asking the right questions than providing the right answers. And you just stated that perfectly. It's like, what do you want it to look like? How do you feel about this? And forcing them to think is something that, like you said, it gives them a picture, and it gives them something to kind of, go after, or a path to follow, I guess.
Yeah. And it's their vision.
Yeah,
their
exactly.
vision.
Their vision.
It teaches them to create their life with intention. And that's where I think my biggest success has been, is the intentionality that I have every day. And it starts with me. And I share this with the students too. It's like, I wake up and I pray honestly that God gets in my head before Brett gets in his head this day. Okay. It's ego versus my spirit. I want to show up as my best self. And then I do a meditation, I do some journaling, and I look at my day and I see what's on my calendar, and I ask myself, with all my appointments that I have on the calendar, it's like, how can I show up as my best self in each of these roles that I'll be playing today? And in the best pursuit of everybody gaining, from the time that we spent together. And so that turns into, I debrief it at night, and I say how it goes, and then I move on. I start over, day by day.
Well, you help a lot of dentists, and you've really served the industry and the profession, and I know you'll continue to do so. But who helps Brett Kessler?
I described the Cliff Litvak, Leon Brady story, and I've got lots of people out there like that. I've got a tribe of people that I can, when I need help, I put out the bat signal and they all show up, and just like I am for them. And I've created that. Many of them are recovery friends. Many of them are dental colleagues. My family is really, they know me, and I've got friends that know me enough to know when I'm bullshitting myself, as opposed to them. And as I am for them, I'm courageous enough to tell them when I think they're off the path they are for me, when I am off the path too. And I have to be, so there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And when you're in a fixed mindset, that's not a healthy place to be on a regular basis, because you're not open to possibilities. And so I try and really stay in that growth mindset, that, yes, I have a plan of things that I want to accomplish on any given day or month or year. But there's have to be able to pivot in the journey on a moment's notice, and not be so attached to some things. And I find when I get sideways on things, it's because of my attachment is my talons are on the meat, and they're not ready to let go of the meat. And sometimes that meat is spoiled, and I need to let go of it.
It's great to be focused and always be growth oriented and everything. But I think you mentioned it in the start of that answer. It's just accountability is a big part of it too. Accountability to ourselves is one thing, but outside of ourselves, the people who know us best, when they can hold our feet to the fire a little bit, and see through some of the bullshit, because we all have it,
right.
No matter how much we try to always be our best version of ourselves, sometimes we do delude ourselves.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I went to rehab, and, and part of my contract with the licensing board here in Colorado. I had a therapist, an addictionologist, addiction medicine doc, whatever, and a practice monitor, and I had all these people looking over my shoulders to make sure I'm practicing safe. But in the 27 plus years that I've been sober, there'd be times where I sought counseling. I had a therapist. And when times got tough, and even as president, I had a therapist, and and I've had coaches along the way. I've invested in coaches to help with accountability and help me see things that I couldn't see. And even as president, I had unattached advisors and coaches that helped me, process things so I could be the best I can possibly be, all behind the scenes. And I invested in that because I feel I'm worth it and I wanted to. So a quick story: when I wrote my business plan for my practice, my coach, that helped me with this, before we had a single patient, he's like, "Brett, you need to block out 6 weeks of vacation." I'm like, "Vacation? Are you kidding me?
What are you talking about? I need to pay
have
my bills."
I know. I got to work. He's like, "No, you need to. You're going to need it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna." He's like, "Well, if you don't do it, I'm not going to work with you."
Wow.
I'm like, "All right."
Wow.
And
I love it.
And it made me think, I'm like, this guy's pretty serious. I'm paying him money for advice, and then he gives me advice and I don't take it. That's what we do. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I booked out vacation, and, it was every, 6 times a year. So every 2 months or so, I would take a vacation for a week. And first time, cash flow is everything. And I didn't have, my wife is an orthodontist and I'm a dentist. We are the cash flow of the practice. Okay. If we shut the practice down, we have no cash flow, and we still have to pay, for the salaries and stuff like that. And so it was very scary. But I'll tell you, we came back because I'm in it all day, every day. And even when I'm home, it's all I was thinking about was growing this business. And for that week, I still couldn't separate myself totally, but I came back the following week. Literally, Jim, we doubled our baseline production and collections.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now we more than made up for that week of non-production, because now we got a new set point that was double what we were before we left.
Yeah.
And so another habit from Stephen Covey, sharpening the saw, habit 7. Okay. I have to take time to sharpen my saw so the saw is more effective. Okay. And so, recharge, reset so I can rally.
Hey, it's just like training for an Ironman. I mean, the recovery is
most important,
just as important as the training, if not more so. Yeah, absolutely. So, there are a lot of dentists out there, 10 years in the profession, and, they're feeling the grind, and they're not sure, like, did I get in the right profession? Like, they're struggling in some way. What would you want them to take from this conversation?
Take some time away from the practice and build a vision for your life. This is the whole basis of my coaching business. And that's my demographic, because 10 years in, gosh, I thought it would be better by now. But when you don't articulate your vision and you don't really know what your purpose is, and a lot of these, because of the benefit environment we're in, a lot of these practices now are very high volume, and a lot of them are treating teeth, not treating people. Pankey said, "I've never had a tooth walk into my office. It was always attached to somebody. Get to know that somebody. You may get to practice. You may get to improve their oral health. Okay, get to know that somebody." And I've had this amazing relationship focused practice where I haven't practiced in this practice for several years now. I saw one of my patients yesterday at an auto parts store. And she came up, grabbed me, gave me a big hug, and asked me give me the hook. And she's like, "What do you think I should do about that?" It's like, but that's what kind of practice I had. Yeah. And I built it by intention. Yeah. And so those dentists that are 10 years in, it's absolutely fixable, but it's an inside job first. And, you get to learn, what is your purpose? What are your goals? And how does this environment, play along with that purpose and goals? And what can you change? Do I have the right team? Do I have the right practice portfolio of procedures that I do? Mm-hmm. Am I attracting the right patients that give me maximum fulfillment? Yeah. And so it's visioned first, and then we can help put it into action. And you can start over at every time. My first Panky, my C1 course, back then it was C, not E. I shared a room with a 75-year-old who was going for the first time. I was, in my late 20s. I wasn't sober yet, by the way, but I was still into the philosophy. And this guy was 75 years old. He's like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a change." I'm like, "Retire." He's like, no. But he wanted professional fulfillment. Yeah. And one of his friends suggested to go, and in the last 8 years of his practice, that's what he got to do. You do it at any time with a but you have to envision it first, and it happens proactively, and it happens intentionally. You have to do the work.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Things don't just happen. You gotta get into it. Yeah. So Brett, man, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking all this time. Like I said, I've just really enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm happy to help more dentists and more people in the industry get to know you as well. So, if anybody wanted to reach out to you, to ask about coaching or any of the other cool things you're doing, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My email is bikoDDS@gmail.com, bikoDDS. My cell phone, 720-989-7960. Social media, messaging. I'm very accessible, and I'm very connected.
Well, that's great, man. I really appreciate everything. You're a pleasure to chat with today. And hey, man, hope to get to see you soon.
Likewise. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And to everyone who's listening, if you are struggling, you don't have to struggle alone. Please reach out.
Great message. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks.